When you have an EWI 4000, you often want to replace the factory sounds that came with the instrument with third-party patches. Unfortunately, the process for doing that is really error-prone and complicated. So in this video, we're going to go through that process from beginning to end and try and make it as simple and straightforward as possible. So to begin, you'll need your instrument, obviously, and then you're also going to need a MIDI to USB cable like this one. USB cable on one end, 2 MIDI cables on the other. If you don't already have one of these, they're pretty affordable, maybe $20 or $30, and you can get them at a bunch of places online or at your local music store. So the first thing we're going to do is get your EWI connected to your computer. So take your MIDI to USB cable, find the 2 MIDI plugs, and find the one that says in. Plug it into the MIDI out port on the back of your EWI, should be the one on the bottom. Then take the other MIDI plug on your cable, which should say out, and you're going to plug that into the MIDI in plug on the back of your EWI. Once that's done, all you have to do is take the USB and plug it into your computer. If you're like me and you've got a newer Mac, you might need some kind of adapter to make this compatible with USB-C, but however you plug USB things into your computer, go ahead and do that with this end of the cable. Okay, so now that your EWI is connected to your computer, go ahead and turn it on. And before we jump right into the EWI software that we're going to use to install these patches, I think it's a good idea to use something else to just confirm that there's communication happening between your instrument and the computer, period. Because if we can eliminate that source of error, that's going to simplify things a lot down the road. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to use this software called MIDI Monitor. It's free. There will be a link in the description to download it. It's super straightforward. You open it up and it's got all this output scrolling through here. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't expect you to know what that means. All that really matters is that there's something here because, like for example, if I turn my EWI off and if I clear this, nothing. But if I turn it back on, all of a sudden the signals are going through. So really the only important thing we need to get from this is that there's information flowing from the EWI to the computer and back. If you've gotten this far, then you're golden and you can move on ahead. If not, there are 3 main things you can do to check and try and get this to work. So the first one might seem kind of obvious because we just did it, but just as a sanity check, make sure your cables are plugged correctly into your EWI. That seems super obvious, but just in case things got mixed up, that'll be really hard to discover later on. If that's good, problem number 2 could be that you don't have the driver installed for your MIDI to USB cable. And if you don't have it installed, or if you're not sure, the process is pretty similar for different kinds of cables. I'm going to open up my internet browser here. And my particular cable here, let's see, is a Yamaha UX16. So if I wanted to install the driver for this cable, I would just go to Google and I would type Yamaha UX16 driver. And it will probably pull up some kind of downloads page on the manufacturer's website. So like for this one, I'll go here and then I'll scroll down and find the list of downloads here. And since I'm a Mac user, I would download the Mac driver. If I were Windows, I would download the Windows driver. From there, you just download it and install it like any other kind of software. You might have to restart your computer just to be sure, but hopefully that will get communication started between your computer and the cable. If that doesn't work, and especially if the cable sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, it's possible that you might have an old or a worn down cable. So be aware that that is a thing that can happen. Cables can go bad. And if it's failing on you kind of sporadically, that might be what's going on. So unfortunately, if it does turn out that your cable is going bad, you'll need to get another one. And that should hopefully fix your issue. If none of those 3 solutions worked, leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to try to respond to all of them. And if enough people report the same issue, I'll create a separate video to try and troubleshoot that specific problem. But assuming that everything is working, your MIDI checking software is indicating that things are connected. If you're like fingering on the instrument, you can see that the messages are changing. If everything here is connected, then we can move ahead. So there are 2 different ways you can proceed from here because there's actually 2 different software programs you can use to install patches on your EWI. The first one is Vyzex. You've probably heard of that one. That's the manufacturer's software provided by Akai. It's kind of tried and true. It's been around for a while. But if you're a Mac user that's running a newer version of macOS, specifically I think it's Big Sur and Catalina, Vyzex will not run on your machine. Thankfully though, there is an alternative to Vyzex called EWITool. So I'm going to show how to use both sets of software. I'm going to start with Vyzex and go through that process from beginning to end. And then I'll jump back to this point for EWITool and go through that entire process from beginning to end. So if you're interested in using EWITool, go ahead and jump to that point in the video. Otherwise, stick with me right here and we'll go through Vyzex. Okay, so first, let me show you where to get Vyzex if you don't have it already. We're going to go to Chrome and we're going to go to Akai's website and specifically to their page for the EWI 4000S. So I believe it's akaipro.com/EWI 4000S. There it is. And so on this page, we're going to navigate to the Downloads tab. And in this list of downloads, we are looking for these two files here. There's the Vyzex editor for PC and there's the Vyzex editor for the Mac. Whichever one is your operating system, go ahead and select that one, download it, and install it like any other program. So I already have Vyzex installed, so I'm going to go ahead and open that up now. And it'll take a few seconds to load. It's going to pull all of the sounds off of your instrument and load them into the software editor. So you might run into a situation like this, where none of the voices on your instrument made it into the software. The way to fix this is we can manually get all of the voices from the instrument by clicking this Get button here. And click Overwrite Preset Bank, and just wait a few seconds for this to load. And there we go. All of the voices that are on my EWI are now in the software. You also might run into an error where it says the EWI can't be found, or there's some kind of like auto-sense error. If that happens, the first thing to check really is that your MIDI connections are set up properly in Vyzex. Meaning, if we go to this MIDI menu here, let's check our MIDI imports and make sure those are selected correctly. So you might see a list of devices here. You're looking for something with a name similar to the brand of your MIDI to USB cable. So I'm using a Yamaha. That means I probably want to pick this Yamaha UX16 here as my MIDI import. Then we want to do that same thing for MIDI out. It should be the same list of devices. I'm going to pick my MIDI to USB cable, and there we go. You should then be able to run get again and re-import those voices from your instrument. So if you've gotten to this point, let's double check one more time and make sure that everything is set up correctly. And we're going to do that by grabbing our instrument. And the first thing we're going to do is just noodle around, play a few notes, and pay attention to the keyboard here at the top of the software. We should see the keys light up as we play. So if I play some random stuff here, so that's working. That means that the signals coming out of the EWI are getting registered by the software. Now we want to check the connection the other way around. So what we're going to do is, right now we're on a default preset. I'm going to change that by double clicking on any old voice in here. And if I listen to the output, the sound should now have changed. Okay, great. So now I know the instructions from the computer telling the EWI to switch voices are getting registered. So the connection is flowing from the EWI to the computer, it's flowing from the computer to the EWI. So we are good to go. Okay, now is the fun part. Now we get to try the new patches that we want to install on our instrument. Today, for this tutorial, we are going to be looking through EWIPatches Volume 1, which is a collection of 30 new voices for the EWI that we've just released. It's inspired by the worlds of R&B and hip-hop and just generally the music of the last 30 years. It's really going to modernize the sound of your instrument, and we think they're a lot of fun to play. If that sounds interesting to you, or if you like the sounds that you hear during this tutorial, go ahead and check it out in the link in the description or at EWIPatches.com. There's a free demo available where you get 3 free sounds just to make sure that everything works on your instrument and that you like the sounds that we're creating. So here on my desktop, I've got Volume 1. Every order from EWIPatches comes in a zip file like this. So I'm going to double click it to open it up. I'll click into this folder. And there are 3 files in here. There's an instructions PDF, and then an SQS and SYX file. We want the SQS file. That's what's read by Vyzex. But before we do that, it's always a good idea to make a backup of your current set. So we are going to do that by clicking Save, and we can just call this Backup. And then that way, if we make any changes that we don't like and we want to go back, we can always just load that and put that back on our instrument. But now let's load in EWIPatches Volume 1 into Vyzex. So I'm going to click the Open button here. And I know that file is on my desktop. So I'm going to go to my desktop, go into that folder and click on EWIPatches volume1.sqs. I'll open that up and voila, these are the 30 voices of volume 1. You can try them out right away, but before you do that, we're going to be flipping back and forth between this and the set that's currently on our instrument. And thankfully, Vyzex provides a handy way to store voices that stays the same as you switch between sets. It's called the collection view, and you can trigger it by going up to Options and then clicking Collection View. And now what we can do is I can click the first voice of the set, hold Shift, and click the 30th patch so that all 30 are selected. And then I'm going to click and drag that into the collection pane here. Now all 30 of those are here and will be available regardless of which set we have loaded. So now we can flip back to our original set. We can click Open, and we can open up the backup that we just created. And here are all of our old patches again. But we can now start playing around with the new patches from EWIPatches Volume 1. I'll demo just a few of them here. One fun one is Bulls on Parade, where we were able to get this like distorted guitar sound that's pretty close to what you hear in the original Rage Against the Machine recording. There's an 808. We've got all sorts of Dr. Dre style synths on here. We've also got some kind of trippier stuff. Like this one is from Mark Juliana's Beat Music album. So go through whatever voices you have loaded in there, play around with them, find the ones that you like, sort of create a list of the ones that you want to add in and incorporate into your current set on your instrument. So let's say, for example, I really liked that sound, Bud, and I want to replace a voice I don't like as much in here. So like, let's try Pulse Brass here. So yeah, we'll take this, we'll drop it in, just click and drag and move it on top. And there, it's replaced. We can repeat that process as many times as we want until we arrive at a set in here that we're happy with. So I'll go ahead and do that here. Okay, I've moved some voices over. Let's say I'm happy with where this is at and I'm ready to actually put this on my instrument. The way we're gonna do that is first, always save. So we're gonna click the save button here, delete that old file name, and we'll just call this version 1. You can use whatever file naming system you want. And now that we've got that saved, we are going to click the put button up here at the top. And it's going to warn us that this is going to completely overwrite what's on your instrument currently. That is what we want. It is basically going to put what's in the editor here onto your instrument. So I'm going to click Overwrite Preset Bank. And then it's going to take about a minute to load each of those voices one by one onto your instrument. So we'll just wait for that to go through here. And once that's done, then you are almost ready to go. At this point, all you need to do, go ahead and turn off your instrument, unplug all of your cables. And the last thing to do is to now turn it back on and navigate to one of your new voices. So like, for example, I put the first part of Corey Henry's Lingus solo from Snarky Puppy on voice 5. So I'll switch down to that and try that out. And there we go. If you've made it this far and you're able to hear the new sounds on your instrument, then congratulations, you've just installed new sounds on your EWI 4000, and I hope you're able to make some great music with them. All right, for everyone using EWITool, this is where we will get started. So installing this, because it is a fan-made software, is a little bit more complicated than installing software normally. So I'll walk you through that here. What you're going to do is go to github.com, and you're going to want to go to this URL, which is in the description, and we're going to go to the releases page here. We are going to find the latest release, and we're going to download the package file associated with it here. So 2.3.0 is our latest release. We're going to download that package file. And when that's done downloading, we're going to open that up. Now, if you're using a Mac, you'll probably get this error, which says that it can't be opened because it's from an unidentified developer. You've probably seen this before, but in case you haven't, here's how you fix that. You're going to go into your system preferences, go to security and privacy, and then once you are in security and privacy, you'll see this little message down here that says EWITool 2.3.0 was blocked from opening, blah, blah, blah. We're going to click open anyway, and then we'll click open. And now we finally get the installer. So we're going to just continue through this. This will look very familiar to other software you install on your Mac. And then that should be installed. We'll just move that installer to the trash, and we'll close Chrome and our system preferences. Now, let's open up EWITool. And this is what it looks like. Pretty minimalist, but I almost kind of prefer this to the dials and buttons and stuff in Vyzex. Anyway, the first thing we're going to want to do is set up the MIDI connections to our EWI. And to do that, we're going to go up to the MIDI menu here and click on ports. And we should see a list of a few different MIDI devices connected to our computer. You're going to want to look for something that has a similar name to the brand or model of your MIDI to the USB cable. So for me, I don't really know what these USB MIDI devices are, but I know that my cable is a Yamaha UX16. So I'm going to click and select both of those and click OK. Now, if we look down here at the bottom, notice my MIDI in and MIDI out has the name of my cable. And for EWI, I've got EWI 4000S connected here. So that's great. That means that everything is connected and we're good to go. The next thing we're going to do is pull all of the patches from your EWI into the software. And the way we do that here is by going to the EWI menu and clicking Fetch All Patches. And there we go. We've got all 100 of the patches that are on the EWI here. And the first thing I'm going to do is save a backup of this because we're going to be making changes and it's always good to have the option to go back to the way things were when we started. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick my patch set library location. This can be anywhere on your computer. If you already have used Vyzex in the past, it can be helpful to just make this the same directory as that so you can look at some of your old files. Yeah, this looks like my old Vyzex directory, so I'm going to go ahead and click open there. Okay, so now that that's set, let's save our current patch set here to our library. So what we're going to do is click on the current patch set tab, click on save to library. You can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it backup.syx. Okay, so now that we've saved that, if we flip back to our patch set library and hit reload, we should see our backup there in our list of patch sets. So that's great. We've made our backup. Now is the fun part. We get to actually try out and listen to the new patches that we want to install on our instrument. Today, we're going to be trying out EWIPatches Volume 1, which is a new collection of 30 sounds that we just released, inspired by the worlds of R&B, hip-hop, and music in general in the last 30 years. We really wanted to create something that sounded modern and cutting edge. If that sounds interesting to you, or if you like the sounds you hear during this tutorial, go ahead and check out EWIPatches Volume 1 at EWIPatches.com. There's a free demo there where you get to try 3 voices and make sure that everything works on your system. So with all that said, I'm going to go to the zip file that every EWIPatches order comes in. I'm going to double click it, open up that folder. And there are 3 files inside here. There's a .sqs file, that's for Vyzex users. And then there's this .syx file, which is going to be what we want here for EWITool. And then what I'm going to need to do is move this .syx file into the patch set library location that I specified in EWITool. So in this case, I've got that folder open here, and I'm going to drop that in like so. Now, if we flip back to EWITool and click reload, there is EWIPatches Volume 1. So at this point, what we want to do is take all of these files and copy them to this tab here called the Scratchpad. Unfortunately, right now you have to do these one at a time in EWITool. So I'm going to go to this set of patches here, and I'm just going to click copy to Scratchpad for each one of these. Okay, that's all of those. And now if we flip back to the Scratchpad, ta-da, we've got all of these voices here for us to mess around with. So you might be wondering, why did we go through the trouble of copying all of this to the Scratchpad? Right now, unfortunately, if you double click or a single click on any of these, it doesn't change the voice on the EWI. So how are you supposed to try these out? Well, the way you do that is by flipping over to the current patch set tab, and we are going to pick a voice we want to replace temporarily. So let's say we want to replace Steam Pipe. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click into Scratchpad Patch for pasting. I'll take Chameleon here and click Paste from Scratchpad. Now Chameleon is there in that slot, and I can go here, click on that, and try it out. So one disadvantage with EWITool is that there's no good way to try out voices without first putting them in the current patch set from the Scratchpad. The one way you could get around that is by going to your patch set library, taking EWIPatches Volume 1 or whatever third-party patch set you have, and loading that into your EWI. Because you've made a backup, you know you can always load that back in, but this is a little bit more risky because it is going to overwrite what's currently on your instrument. So you want to really make sure you've got a working backup first. But once we overwrite that, once that's done loading, we can fetch all patches again. Wait for that to load. And now that we've got all of the new patches in here, we can go into the patch editor and very easily switch between these and kind of make a note of which ones we want to incorporate into our final set. So for example, we've got this one. This is a recreation of the guitar on Rage Against the Machine's Bulls on Parade. That one's a lot of fun. We've got an 808 recreation on here. We've got Chameleon, a recreation of that synth, which is a classic. All sorts of cool stuff in here. So you can play around with these, try them out, find which ones you like, and make a note of them. Then when you're ready to add those into your current set on your EWI, let's go back to our original set here, load that into our EWI, wait for that to go. And once that's done, we'll re-fetch those into the current patch set. Wait for that to finish. And there we go. Now we can go back to our list and copy from the Scratchpad whatever we want to replace in our patch editor. So let's find one I want to replace. Like, what about Spirit Voice 5th? Let's try that one out. Yeah, definitely want to get rid of that one. So we'll go to our current patch set, and what number was that? 17. So I'll go to 17, I'll click on it, and let's say I want to replace that with, Chameleon. I'll go ahead and select that in this drop down here, and then click Paste from Scratchpad, and voila, Chameleon is now in slot 17. There we go. And you can repeat that process as many times as you want to customize this set with as much of your old voices and your new voices as you like. Put them in whatever order you want, have as many new ones as you want, as few new ones as you want. And then once you're happy with where this is at, we actually need to save it onto your instrument so that it remembers this beyond just when it's plugged into the computer. And the way we're going to do that is the same way we loaded our new patches earlier. We are going to click this Load into EWI button, but first, always, don't forget to save. So we are going to save our current patch set by going to Current Patch Set and clicking Save to Library. And we'll just call it My New Set.syx. Click OK. And then if I flip back to the patch set library and click Reload, our new set is there. And I'm going to click on it and click Load into EWI. Click OK. And then once that's done, you're basically there. All you need to do now is power off your EWI, unplug your MIDI cables, and we're going to turn it back on. And now go to a slot where you know a new voice should be. So I know I put Chameleon at slot 17. I'll go ahead and queue up 17 and try that out. There we go. So if you've made it that far, then congratulations, you have just loaded new sounds onto your EWI 4000. And I hope you have a blast making awesome music with these new patches. One last plug for anyone still watching. The sounds you heard installed today are part of EWIPatches Volume 1, which is a new collection of 30 new voices for the EWI 4000 just released this year. It's inspired by the worlds of R&B, hip-hop, and modern pop, and it's meant to really modernize the sound of your EWI. They're a blast to play. We had a lot of fun working on it, and we hope you enjoy it. If you're interested, go to EWIPatches.com and try out our demo where you can get 3 voices for free. And with that, happy music making.